one more for everyone because it's a special occasion.
No green summer fade and winter draw near, my Lord, in your presence I live without fear. Through tempests, through snows, through turbulent tides, the touch of your hand is my strength and my guide. I ask for no riches that death can destroy. I crave only thee, your love and your joy. I ask for no riches that death can destroy. I crave only thee, your love and your joy. The dancers will pass, the singing must end. I welcome the darkness with you for my friend.
Just to thank the choir. Swamiji has written these songs over many decades, and they've been sung around Europe and many countries. The chants were sung in Africa when I was there. We sang them. Asha was just in New Zealand, and these songs were sung there. And of course, all around the U.S. And it just is very touching to see them sung in India. Thank you.
This reading from Rays of the One Light by Swami Kriyananda is entitled, Why Tell God Anything When He Knows Everything? Why offer God anything when He has everything? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. Jesus Christ teaches as the ideal prayer one that addresses very human demands to God. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Jesus himself says, just before suggesting this prayer, Your Father knoweth what things ye have need of before ye ask him. Why then his recommendation that we pray for anything? The answer is that we should offer ourselves up in acceptance of his abundance. Don't pester God as though constantly pulling on his sleeve to get his attention. Approach him with the confidence of a child in its parent. And in that spirit then, ask him lovingly, but with complete trust, as though demanding your birthright, and without the slightest doubt in your mind that he wants only your best. For you don't have to persuade him the way a beggar or a stranger might. You are his own child. God knows everything already. He knows what is in your heart. It is you who need to clarify your feelings, that you attune yourself to him in turn more clearly. For only by such clarity will you be able to receive perfectly what he gives you. For the same reason we need to offer ourselves to him not because he needs anything from us, except, as Yogananda said, our love, to complete his love for us, but because by self-giving we expand our awareness from its confinement in the little ego outward to infinity. Those who partake of the nectar remaining after a sacrifice, says the Bhagavad Gita in the 4th chapter, attain to the infinite spirit. That person, however, who makes no sacrifices never truly succeeds in enjoying even the blessings of this material world. How then could he attain happiness in subtler realms? Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
So this is from Whispers from Eternity. I'm going to read the poem called Demand for Union with the Almighty. O Father, behold me through the pores of the sky. Smile at me through the twinkling stars. Strengthen me through the sun. Calm my feelings through the moon. Caress me through the breeze. Love me through my love. Throb in me through my heart. Breathe thine immortality through this mortal frame of mine. Speak through my voice. Help others through my hands. Use my mind to inspire them. Breathe through my breath. For within this fragile voil, thou alone canst sing thy complete eternal song.
Good morning again, everyone. It's really a joy to be here with you all. This is such a wonderful and an important topic. Really, it's about attunement to God's grace that's always flowing, answers that are always flowing, inspiration, God's blessings that are always flowing, that we need to uplift ourselves and magnetize ourselves, energize ourselves, which I was hearing. I was in the back room, the choir was doing some super conscious living exercises before singing, and practicing before singing for the satsang. We have to open ourselves up to be able to receive God's blessings. And I remember a time when I was going through some struggles, and I was praying to Yoganandaji. I had a picture similar to this one, this size, and I was sitting in front of him asking why were things so bad, and why, what was wrong with my life. And then I thought of my friends. I said, they're having a hard time. I thought of my relatives. And I was praying, why is everything so bad? And it was so clear. The answer from Yoganandaji was this: what station are you tuned to? And that's really the question that we have to ask ourselves, because the divine energy and blessings and inspiration for our life and prosperity and whatever we need is ever there. But we have to attune ourselves subtly to be able to receive it. Yoganandaji even received in the New York subway the poem he wrote, Samadhi. So he must have been in Samadhi. He said, no one bothered me. And he said, in fact, no one saw me. So but he was completely attuned to God. And even in that place, he was able to receive that inspiration from the divine. So we have to be open. One thing has been openness and receptivity. And through that openness, like in the purification ceremony we had earlier today, it says, the Master says, open your heart to me and I will enter and take charge of your life. There was a disciple of Paramahansa Yoganandaji who said, I don't feel you as much as this other disciple feels you, Master. And he said, well, if you shut the door, how can I come in? And so if we close the door to God and gurus, they can't come. The beautiful chant, Master's favorite, door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Now, I was thinking about that. Now, it sounds good. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. But how? Do we really keep the door open? And if we do, how? It means active. It's not a passivity. That it's a kind of an affirmation that you're hoping that the door's open. It means you're working on opening and keeping the door of your heart open to God. And there's an interesting story of Master where he said, after he went into fully God consciousness, after he was completely freed, he said he prayed to the Divine Mother, and he said, I prayed and prayed for so long and meditated. And he asked her, why didn't you come sooner? And Divine Mother responded to him, there were still some desires. And he understood. And that's, in our life, on the path, we're working out those desires, like Sabari, who was sweeping the paths, waiting for Lord Rama to come. And the other ascetics were doing different things, postures and various mudras and bandhas and whatever. And that was more for them, when you think about it. But she was sweeping the paths with devotion. Now, what does that mean? She was opening her heart. She was sweeping away the desires of her heart, the attachments, the tendencies, waiting for the Lord to come. And when he did come, he did not go to those others. He came directly to her. And you can't take one step, Swami Sri Teswarji has said, on the path without openness of the heart, receptivity, attuning to God. You all remember the story where this man came in and he had a long list of questions in the interview with Yoganandaji, and he asked one of the questions, and Master said, love God. And that was his response. And the man thought, that's kind of too simple. So he went to the next question, and Master says, love God. And then he asked another one, and Master says, love God, really strongly, and he walks out of the room. Yoganandaji didn't. The man was just stunned. He just thought he didn't understand. But he did understand that man could never see God, have the experience of God, as long as he was analyzing, as long as he was mental. There were 3 hermits that Tolstoy told this story of, the 3 hermits who lived on an island, and they had a beautiful prayer, we are 3, thou art 3, meaning to God, have mercy on us. And it was such a sweet prayer. And then the bishop, the local bishop came, and he had heard because miraculous things were happening around these 3 hermits. So he came and he said, now what's going on here? So they told him the prayer, and he said, no. You have to do the right prayer. So then he teaches them the prayers, and they're so happy, thank you. And so as he was leaving on his boat, he thought, now I've done a good job. I've taught them the right prayer. And they were just simple. They simply loved God. So he's going off, and then suddenly he looks back, and there's this ball of light. And in that light are the 3 hermits running on top of the water. And they were saying, Your Excellency, we've forgotten the prayers. Please wait. And he looks back, he says, no, you don't need those prayers. Keep doing what you're doing. And so I said, simple. You don't have to be like anybody else. I have to be this, I have to do this. And it's simply from your heart. And there was the man Horace, who was at Mount Washington. And Master, there were other people who were much more learned. I mean, think of Brinda, the postman. He was he was illiterate. He was a disciple of Lady Mahashaya. He delivered his mail. That's all he cared about was the bliss state. He was in the bliss state going from house to house and with the mail. So he comes to Lady Mahashaya to see his guru, and another man is there, and he's, I'm ready for more techniques, Guruji. And Lahiri Mahashaya says, no, I don't think so. He keeps pestering him. He says, I don't think so. Then Brenda walks in. He says, Brenda, please come and sit with me here. And he looks at his disciple. He says, now, Brenda, do you want some more techniques? No. I don't want anything else. And he said, are you sure you don't want the second Kriya? He says, no, Master, no. I came today to get your blessing so I can deliver my mail. I'm just so much in bliss, I can't even do my work. And Lahiri Masha looks at the other man and he says, Brenda is floating in spirit. It's so beautiful. And the other man hung his head because he had the same tools, but he was a poor workman. And he understood that until he could open himself up and be in love with God, which is what, there's a story of Ramakrishna who, he was in ecstasy dancing in God. And then he fell down on some hot coals. And, one got stuck on his back. He got back up, he's still dancing. And I went, Master, you're back. And he says, what is it? And he looks, he says, I'll just take it off. He just keeps dancing. Now that's when you know someone's in God consciousness, when they're not flooded in that body. So here, this man, Horace, was just very humble, very open. That's why I wanted to play this chant, What Lightning Flash. Master would love playing that. And he had visions of the Divine Mother, where she was there with him. And at one of the Christmas meditations, she was just right there, and Master just had a conversation with her. And he was just so enthralled. He said, oh, you're so beautiful. Don't go, please. Don't go away. And everybody else didn't see her, but they could hear his conversation with her. And then he said, oh, the material desires of these people are driving you away. Don't go. Please don't go. And, it makes you think of a time when Master was going to America, and he wanted to be sure that it was the right thing to go. He wouldn't be caught up in the materialism of the West. So he wanted he wanted God's blessings. So he prayed to God. And he prayed and he prayed and he prayed until his brain, he said he couldn't pray anymore. He felt his brain was going to split. He just kept calling. As Master said, shell after shell after shell of devotional calling to God. And then the door opens. Oh, there's a knock at the door. And he opens, and an ascetic walks in. And he says, the Lord has heard your prayer. And it was Babaji. What an incredible story. And Master, he realized that was Babaji, and he was so happy. Finally, he saw Babaji, and he said, "Here, take some tea." He said, "Oh, you must be the great Babaji." He says, "Yes, that my mother has heard your prayer. She's saying go to America." That's reassuring that she told him to go. Babaji sent him, and so Master was he just didn't know what to do. So Babaji blesses him and tells him various things, and then he says, Master says, "Oh, don't go, please." I mean, you can imagine, Babaji comes, he says, "Please don't go." He says, "No, I'll see you some other time." And so Babaji leaves, and Master, he tries to run after him, and his feet, they're planted in the ground, he can't move, and he's just like, it's right, you can't just imagine the story. And so Babaji says, I'll see you again. But that kind of devotion is what the devotee has to have. Otherwise it's a nightmare. We're living in, it's not easy times. But that love, if we can develop and keep developing that divine love, then the masters, they come. You can feel them in this temple now. They come and they bless us. And, it's a wonderful prayer. I pray all the time to the gurus, please come to the satsang, or come to the kirtan, or come to, whatever. It is, and do they come? Of course they come. It's more, are we, like this passage is saying, are we uplifted enough to be able to see them or to receive them or to feel their blessings? There was a woman who came to Ananda village. Now she was the mother of a member. She wasn't a member. And she was out for a walk and she saw Master, just out at Ananda. And she said, do you come here often? He says, I'm here all the time. And they had a conversation. She was a very devout Catholic lady. She came back, and her daughter said she couldn't talk the mother couldn't talk for a while. I mean, she was just completely taken. But she told people, I saw Yoganandaji here. Now, of course, why wouldn't he come? Why wouldn't he be with you all? Why wouldn't God come to, whenever you deeply call with the devotion? And so, back to this man horse. So he was just devout, that's all. He didn't know anything else. And Master said about him that he's nearly fully liberated. Wow. The other people went, impossible. How can this man, he could barely walk, he could barely talk, but he was in love with God and he served his guru. That's all he thought about. And so Master said he's nearly fully liberated because God, Divine Mother, is pleased with his devotion. What a great answer. She's pleased with his devotion. And then the other man says, it must be a very simple kind of devotion. And Master said, well, that's what God loves. No, it's not like you have your prayer written out, it's got to be just this way, and it's got to be this way. And just this freedom in your heart that you're just loving God with everything you have. And, at times, you have to put out, continuous energy to be, not at times, all the time, to be receptive. And the guru can test you that way. You look at Milarepa, his Guru Marpa, had him build and rebuild and rebuild. I mean, what was he doing? He was having him build a house. And he said, I didn't tell you there, put it over there. Gee, so he can't think of bricks. So he takes the house down and he moves it. I didn't tell you there, put it over there. He takes the house down. He puts it over it. I didn't tell you there. 8 times. That had to be hard on him. But he became the greatest yogi of Tibet because his guru opened him up. That's what happened. And as he followed his guru, he was able to, have the devotion that he needed to carry forth. And so it's not always, easy to open ourselves, but Divine Mother helps us in various ways. And the other thing is we have to be able to be receptive to the flow of God's grace. Now, there's a beautiful story of Master, and he was just completely, he said, I killed Yogananda long ago. There's nobody here but God now. So, poems, books, music, God's grace to others, whatever, everything flowed through him completely with no obstruction at all. And once Master was going down, he was traveling, and he liked to stop at a sweets shop. And so he stopped there, and he sent one of the nuns in to buy some. He liked these particular kind of cookies. So she goes in, she comes back, he says, Master, they don't have them today. And he says, and I just said, you have to love what he did. He just looks at me, he says, what happened, Divine Mother? That's what you have to be in your life. What happened? Did I do something wrong? And immediately, a flash of light hit that little shop, and the lady owner runs out with the bag of the cookies he liked. He says, oh, take these. I'll bake another batch for the people who these were for. But, immediately, what happened? Am I out of tune? Did I do something wrong? Should I be doing better? And Divine Mother answered him right away. And Master was so completely in attunement with her, with God, that he could read all the thoughts of everybody, everywhere. He told the disciples, he said, I know every thought you think. And one person, he was so clear, he said, you have a sour taste in your mouth. And he said, how do you know that? I'm as much in you as I am in myself. Master could look like the person he was standing next to. So, like if Sharmila was standing here, if I were like him, I would start looking like her. I mean, he could look like Amalita Galikurji, the frail, singer, opera singer. And Master somehow looked like her when he was standing next to her. And Portis Gil, who was in charge of the center, one of the centers in Mexico, was this big chunky guy. Master, looked like him. And he was so clear, he could taste the food without tasting it in his mouth. He just, with the spiritual eye, he said, okay, that's enough spices. And he could energize by just looking at the spiritual eye, and his whole body would be charged. He didn't have to move his body. He was able to write, Divine Mother wrote books through him. He said, in fact, the Gita, he said, I tuned myself to Veda Vyasa directly. And he told me what to write. Just very beautiful stories, and all the visions he had. I told you of the one of, he had many of Divine Mother, but one time one of the disciples said, Guruji, what are you, who was that you were talking to the other day out in the garden, in the back garden? He said, well, who? And he says, I don't know, there was some person out there. I think he had many visitations. And he said, I don't know who you mean. There's so many who come. And I talked with him, and one time he had a vision of Jesus, and the Holy Grail went from the mouth of Jesus to his. One, he said he wanted to hear about the life of Ramakrishna. And somebody said, what did you hear? Did he tell you? He says, I had an understanding. He was completely in a free flow with God. And Swamiji, he lived that life as well. And all the books, all the music, the beautiful songs you sang today, all the people, all the talks, all the things he did, he just kept that attunement with God. And I'll share with you, we all should try always to live our lives in that way, that we let the gurus work with us and train us and discipline us and whatever is needed to be able to get in tune more. That disciple of, I can't remember who it was, but it was one great saint. And he had his disciple, he told him, that he gave him the job to just carry wood. He's sort of like the Milarepa story. And the man would carry wood every day for the stove, the kitchen, at their ashram. And he was never allowed to go into the satsangs. Wherever people were going to see the guru, he said, no, you do the wood. And so you can imagine how he felt. Every time he was outside, everybody else was sitting at the guru's feet. He said, no, wood. And so the man, he just kept doing the job for years and years. And then, he had come as a young man. And then one day he saw that his hair had turned gray. Some of his hair got caught on the wood or whatever, and he thought, I've been here all this time, and that's all I did was carry the wood. He didn't have one initiation. He didn't go to one class or darshan or whatever. So he started to weep because he thought, I spent all my life here and nothing happened. And his guru comes out just as his first tear is about to drop, and he catches a tear and he says, you don't know what you've attained. That even if one tear from such a great soul would hit the ground, there would be famine for 7 years in this land. And he said, you don't know what you've attained. The guru was working with him, working through his karma for him, blessing him, showering him, filling him with his grace. do that job. And then he touched him, and immediately the man went into samadhi. And same with the disciple of Lahiri Mahashaya. He was never allowed to come in. But I think it was 8 years or something. And then finally, Lahiri Mahashaya gives him Kriya. After he didn't let him do anything but serve him. He gave him Kriya, and the first time he did Kriya, he went into ecstasy. He was inwardly preparing. And so the gurus are working with us. We can't say, I don't want to do this, I don't want to sing in the choir, I'd rather do this, I'd rather be meditating. It's the preparation to open the door of the heart so that God's blessings can come. And that attunement is vitally important. I'll share a story to close with you from my life when I was, I guess I could say I was happily in America for many years. I was serving at Ananda Village. And then I was trying to feel what Divine Mother, what her inspiration was for, what I should do. And I honestly, this is a story of how I got to India. I never thought about living in India. I didn't want to live in India. Maybe I don't think I'd ever even been to India. This was in 2003. And so then Swamiji moves to India with a small group of people, and we start Ananda in India. So then the thought came, wow, if Ananda's there, it could be nice. But still, I didn't have this longing that I had to be wandering by the Ganges. And so I was at a program, and this is very interesting. I was about to go give a class, and they kept sort of in my mind, I could just kind of hear Divine Mother starting to talk about India, and India, I just couldn't really get it, because I was so enmeshed in America. And so then but then there was going to be a tour, a pilgrimage to India, from America coming to India. And 1% I thought, well, maybe I'll just go see what Ananda's doing in India, but I really didn't have any desire of my own. But before that class, I brought out, I think it was Songs of the Soul, Master's book, and I just thought, I was praying to him and the Masters, what should my life be? And I was trying to be open to divine guidance and whatever Master Divine Mother wanted. So I opened the book and I opened the page to the poem, My India. And I went, well, I never opened that page before. That was pretty amazing to me. So I go to do the program. I had a weekend of programs, and now no one knew I had any thought about India. I never talked about it to any of the people there. By the end of the weekend, I had somehow people had given me friends and close friends. I ended up with several $1,000s. So then I had the money to go to India if I chose. Now, this was just unfolding before me. And so then at a certain point, so then I get to India, and I kind of liked India, but it wasn't this, thing. Then I meet Swamiji, and he says, you need to be in India. And that was this clear guidance. And I said, I didn't know. I just was saying yes. And then Jyotish and Devi were saying, you need to be in America. You can't leave your job right now. I said, okay. So there was this thing going like this. And so anyway, before I left, I went to Swamiji again. He says, well, you need to be here, but not yet. And I said, all right. So I go back to America, and I'm just listening to Divine Mother. And so then an opportunity came where I could come back. It was 3 months from that date. So I called Swamiji and I said, Swamiji, I'm coming back to India, because he really wanted me. I said, I'm coming back, but I'm visiting for 5 weeks. And he said, yes, 5 months. And this was over the phone. And I thought that he didn't hear me well. So I said, Swamiji, it's 5 weeks I'm coming back to India to help in Ananda. And he says, yes, 5 months. So, the third time I just said, I just thought he made a mistake. This is how the mind goes. So I come to India, and I'll never forget, there's Swamiji was just, he was there, and he had his hands out. And we were at the wishing tree at the Metropolitan Mall, and I took his hands, and he was just so happy. And so then I was, the next day, I was going to the sadhana at the house we were living in, and then, Dharmadas was leaving, and I said, well, I just got to India. I said, is this the place for the sadhana? He said, yeah, why don't you lead it, because I don't feel well. I said, I'm just arriving here. He said, nobody else, just go down there and lead the sadhana. So I led the sadhana, and then I came back to my room, and then there's a knock on the door, and somebody says, Dharmadas has to go, can you do the class? I said, I just got here. He said, nobody can teach it, nobody. Just go, go teach the class. So I went and taught the class. And so things just kept unfolding like that. So finally I asked Swamiji, I said, Swamiji, it seems like, I could stay if you need me to stay here. And he says, look around. You're desperately needed. And I said, well, I'm happy to stay. You've got to stay in India. And so then I stayed longer. And guess for how long?
5 minutes.
5 months. And then I went back and I packed up, and I've been here ever since, 10 years practically now. But I told that story because I was just following. I was trying to stay in tune and trying to follow and listen. And then as I got going, then Divine Mother really stepped in and made it more and more and more clear that my life was to be here. And you will find that as you lift your antenna and keep asking and keep on the right station, she will always guide you in the right way. God bless you. Let's meditate just a moment, then we'll have the arati and the blessing.